You know that common idea that your mind is kind of like a secret pilot, right? Sitting inside your head, driving your body around like it's a vehicle? Well, it's a super popular way to think about ourselves. But today, we're going to dig into philosopher Gilbert Ryle's incredible argument that this whole picture, it's just wrong. He says it's built on one massive mistake. He famously called it the dogma of the ghost in the machine, and we are absolutely here to bust that myth.
So, here's our game plan. We'll start by unpacking what Ryle calls the ghost in the machine. Then, we'll see exactly why this sets up a really problematic partnership. After that, we get to the core of his argument, this idea of a category mistake. And to make sense of that, we'll use a fantastic analogy about finding a university. Then, we'll bring it all back to the mind and, finally, explore what all this means for that old mind versus matter debate.
All right, let's dive in. What exactly is this ghost in the machine? Well, Ryle calls it the official doctrine because for a long time it's been the default way many of us think about the mind and body, thanks in large part to the philosopher Descartes.
So, the idea goes something like this. Every single one of us is living two parallel lives. On the one hand, you've got your body. That's the public part. It's out there in the world, it takes up space, and it follows the laws of physics, just like any other object. But then there's the mind. And that's completely private. It's your inner world, something only you have access to. It doesn't exist in any physical space. And for everyone else, its inner workings are a total black box.
As you can probably guess, Ryle was not a fan of this. He came up with that famous nickname, the ghost in the machine, and he says he uses it with deliberate abusiveness. He wanted to really drive home how absurd he thought it was. This picture of a spooky, non-physical ghost somehow operating a physical machine. And this leads us straight to the central issue with this whole official doctrine. I mean, if you say the mind and body are two totally different kinds of things, you end up with a partnership that is, well, deeply mysterious. Here it is, the million-dollar question. If your mind is a ghost, if it has no size, no weight, no physical properties at all, then how in the world does it make your arm move? How does your purely mental decision to grab a cup of coffee translate into a physical action? How does this ghost actually pull the levers of the machine? No one has a good answer. Ryle has this great image for it. He says the problem is like a theoretical shuttlecock. It just gets endlessly batted back and forth. Physiologists can't study the connection because it's not a physical event, and psychologists can't study it because it's not a purely mental one. It's this weird interaction that seems to belong to neither world, so it remains a complete mystery. So what's Ryle's big solution to this impossible puzzle? Well, this is where it gets really interesting. He argues that we're not stuck on some super complex scientific problem we just haven't figured out yet. No, he says the problem itself is born from a much more basic error in our logic. And he gives this error a name, a category mistake. This is what happens when we talk about something as if it belongs to one logical box when it actually belongs in a completely different one. It's like we're trying to navigate a city using a map of the solar system. We're just using the wrong kind of map. Ryle gives this funny example to make it obvious. The joke works because it treats a flood of tears and a sedan chair as if they're the same type of thing, two items on a list of ways to get home. But that's just absurd, right? One is an emotional state, the other's a vehicle. They're in completely different categories. And Ryle's whole point is that the ghost in the machine idea makes the exact same kind of mistake, just in a less obvious way. Now, to make this idea of a category mistake really stick, Ryle uses this brilliant analogy about a tourist trying to find a university. It perfectly explains what he means. Okay, so just picture this. A tourist is visiting Oxford. They're given a tour of all the colleges, their libraries, the science labs, the museums, the whole 9 yards. After seeing all these individual places, they turn to the guide and ask, okay, this is all great, but where is the university? See the mistake? It's a classic category mistake. The tourist is looking for the university as if it's just another building on the tour, another thing he can point to, like the library. But of course, the university isn't some extra piece of the puzzle. The university is the way all those pieces, the colleges, the libraries, the people, are organized and work together. So what does a confused tourist have to do with the human mind? Well, this is Ryle's big move. He takes the exact same logic from that analogy and applies it directly to the mind-body problem. Ryle's conclusion is that this whole dogma of the ghost in the machine is basically a philosopher's myth, and it's a myth that's been built on the very same kind of mistake that our tourist made. So here's the mistake. We treat the mind as if it's another thing alongside the body, just a spooky, invisible one made of different stuff. But Ryle's correction is this. Mental words like knowing or hoping or intending, they don't refer to secret events happening in a ghost world. They refer to the clever, purposeful, and intelligent way our public actions are organized.
To put it another way, the mind isn't some spectral machine hidden inside the regular one. It's not a weird bit of not clockwork, as Ryle puts it. The mind isn't the ghost doing the piloting. The mind is the skillful piloting itself, visible in our actions. Okay, so if we accept what Ryle is saying here, it has some pretty huge implications. It really changes the entire conversation. The biggest takeaway is that this huge, centuries-old philosophical war between mind and matter, it might just be based on a completely improper question. The whole debate starts from a flawed premise. You know, once you spot the category mistake, that impossible problem of how a non-physical mind connects to a physical body, it just kind of dissolves. The goal isn't to prove that everything is really just matter or that everything is really just mind. Those two camps, materialism and idealism, are both just different answers to the wrong question. They both assume mind and body are the same type of thing, but Ryle says they're not. It's like arguing about whether the tide is rising or hopes are rising is the real kind of rising. It's a silly argument because the word is being used in totally different ways. And that leaves us with a really fascinating question to think about. If our mind isn't some secret thing hidden inside of us, but is actually found in the intelligent way we act and live in the world, what does that say about who we are? It suggests our identity, our very self, isn't locked away in some private inner theater. It's out here, in the open, embodied in everything we do.